Welcome. This is the first episode in a brand new series where I get to interview amazing magicians. And I'm really stoked for you to listen to it. It was a super enjoyable conversation. We talked about a whole lot of stuff, ranging from jazz magic to creating incredibly unique experiences as one off performances. We talked about Antonio's love for chess. We talked about some crazy, interesting questions, and I really hope you enjoy it. I do just want to preface this with a little bit of a technical disclaimer. There were some tech issues in this. My mic didn't sound very good, and the videos and sound on my video and sound didn't always sync up. So it should sound fine. And Antonio's stuff, which he does most of the talking anyway, so that will sound really good. But I just wanted to give you a heads up, so bear with me on this one. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I really hope you enjoy this video, and please let me know if you want this kind of series to continue down in the comment section below. But without further ado, here is my full conversation with Antonio. Okay, Antonio,
Yeah,
do you want to introduce yourself a bit, kind of talk a bit about how you got into magic, uh, that kind of stuff?
yeah. I'm 21. I got into magic 12 years ago when, there's a couple of things that got me into it. My dad showed me a trick. I thought that was really cool. He didn't explain it, so I was like intrigued into like learning it. And then I saw David Blaine do some stuff. I saw who else was really good. There's a mentalist from New York who's not very well known. His name is Gerard Senechi, and I met him when I was 10 years old, and he showed me uh, some stuff where like he writes down a prediction, you name something, and the prediction's correct, or like spoon bending, or like
Mm,
this style of mentalism that at 10 years old, I didn't know that was anything. So I felt
mm,
like, holy, this guy is like real magic. And I really thought that like learning these things was kind of like learning a superpower back at that time. Like there's got to be some way. So I think that's what really got me intrigued in the first place, was just like this idea of being able to do things that weren't possible, and that you could learn to like do things that were not possible. It's not like you're born with this gift. It's like you can learn to do it.
mm. And so, what does that turned into? What is magic for you now? Is that your job? Um,
Yeah. So nowadays, magic is my full time job. I perform mostly at like corporate events, like strolling or table hopping, and I also do close up shows. But close up shows are something that are not really common in Brazil. So I'm kind of the only guy that does close up shows in Brazil.
oh,
Like
great.
a proper like 30 to an hour show where you're sitting down chairs and just like nobody does that. But it's like we're lacking magicians. Like we need people who can do that. Like it can't be that it's just me, but right now it is. So yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, well, we've been friends for a little bit, but there's a lot of stuff that I haven't asked you.
Yeah.
Um, some of it because I was like holding out because I knew that if I start some kind of interview thing, I'm gonna want to get you on. So I got some like juicy questions.
Okay.
Um, but one of the kind of first things I want to talk about is like when I first saw your magic stuff like 2 or 3 years ago. It like immediately I was like, that is the kind of style that I want to go for. And when I was thinking about that, why that was, I think it had something to do with how you kind of blended like chaos and elegance, which in my mind I couldn't see going together. But I think with your style of magic, you do kind of blend those two things together. So could you talk a little bit about that? How do you approach chaos and in that way?
That's an insane question, because like that makes a lot of sense, but I don't think I've ever consciously thought about that.
Mm,
I think it came to be because of who were my influences. So like I grew up watching a lot of Dani DaOrtiz and Juan Tamariz and studying a lot of the Spanish schools. Of course, like I got a lot from that. But then at the same time, one of my best friends is Franco Pascali, and he's like an insane cardist, and like everything he does is perfect and elegant and precise, and it's like it's the best you've ever seen that move done every single
mm,
time. So like I guess it's a combination from there of like taking approaches from the Spanish school, but also learning from people who are like technically really skilled. Uh, but I haven't, I think, consciously thought of like combining skill with chaos, or not skill. You said elegance.
yeah, yeah.
I think it has a little bit to do with like if you're not touching the cards, and if you're doing hands off, and if you're doing anything chaotic, it will like effects tend to feel very magical because it seems like it's not under your control, right? Chaos by nature is not under anybody's control, and if you're not touching the cards, and if you are touching the cards, you should be as elegant as possible. You should be natural. You should be minimalist. Like just the way in which you handle cards. There's a lot of talk around how you can tell how good a magician is by how he's like holding a deck. Like if you see somebody hold it like this versus if you see somebody hold it like this, like you can kind of tell. I think this is a very good grip. Like a lot of times you see people hold cards and they're like this, but this is like relaxed, controlled.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my thumb is open because I know that I have control over the cards. And it's like so I think the elegance that you're mentioning maybe just shows a bit of like familiarity with the prop, and it shows that you're like handling it properly. You're not like, you're handling it the way it's like meant to be handled almost. And then chaos comes in like the effect side of it to like make tricks seem more fair and more impossible. But like I hadn't thought about that question before. So yeah.
Yeah, and I guess like that's actually a really good way of approaching it, where it's like elegance when you're the one holding the cards, but then chaos when it's in the spectator's hands and letting them feel the freedom of that. Yeah, that's a really great point.
Because
And so
spectators are chaotic. They're not elegant. Like they don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
yeah, and I guess you can always enhance that with your instructions and how you approach things as well.
Yeah.
Um, okay, well then, can you talk a bit about your influences in that regard? I know Dani DaOrtiz has been an influence for me as well,
Yeah.
but I kind of uh, have tried to really strip back a lot of the chaos that I learned originally.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, so what did you learn from him, and also on the elegant side of things from Franco?
Yeah. So I found Danny in a moment in my life where I thought I knew it all. I was like, nah, bro, this card magic thing, I've seen everything. I was like 14, and I was like, I literally cannot be fooled. Like, there's no way you show me, like, by other magic, yeah, but you show me a card trick, I'll know it. I know every card trick. And then I didn't know a single Danny trick. I saw him do shit, I was like, what the? So, like, that brain explosion was like really humbling for me to be like, okay, there's like a lot I don't know. I mean, and at 14, that was like super necessary. So Danny came really to show me a bunch of fooling elements of magic. Like, I think his way of handling cards is I don't care. So a lot of the chaos comes from not caring. Like, this is more, let's say, chaotic than if you went up to a spectator and you did this. But it's
Mm.
just because you don't care. You're like, yeah, take one. That doesn't matter. Like anyone's. I don't care. And it's like this attitude of not caring. A lot of times is really interesting because a lot of times you do care. You do. It is important. But a lot of times you do want to give that throwaway attitude. Like, it doesn't matter. And that attitude gets you so far. Like, I mean, if it's only magicians watching and we can kind of talk methods, sometimes
There we
you
go.
have to pick a card, and later you can convince them that they thought of a card. And that can only be done if you don't give an absolute, when you have
Yeah,
them pick the card. And it's like, it's interesting. The amount of things that not caring about some procedure achieves you. And in the same way, the way that Danny explores chaos is interesting because a lot of times he's constructing a routine where they can't even remember the procedure. So they're like, yeah, I picked a card. Because like the whole procedure is like just a bunch of things, but they know that that's like we picked a card. So I think that's also interesting and like trying to make something that in the moment seems really fair and in the memory will seem like I just picked a card. So it's like, it was fair
yeah.
to pick a card at this point, even though it wasn't just a selection, but since it was fair, you remember it as a selection, and as a selection, it's like super fun.
Do you think
Uh,
there's a line there between like, because I do kind of feel like this with a lot of Danny's tricks where they almost feel, I mean, Danny is really good at writing that line, but do you, there's a line where if you go over it, it becomes too chaotic and now it's confusing.
yeah, like the
How do you,
Vernon chaos is not magic. Yeah,
exactly, yeah,
I think the way you don't cross that line is you try to keep it clear in mind what is the effect and what do you want to happen in order to achieve that effect. So, for example, let's say the effect is um, you find a thought of card. The procedure that can be random and so on is not you finding the thought of card unless it's like a way of finding it that's very unique and that seems very chaotic even though it's like memorable and so on. But the part that can be kind of chaotic is in the selection of the card, because that's something that I don't think is too important for the audience's recollection of the effect. When they're thinking, I picked a card and he found it, it's like I picked a card and it doesn't matter necessarily how you picked the card, unless it does. But then, you have to give effect examples. But
Yeah.
like, so for example, if everybody's shuffling the deck under the table, and you cut and you pass two from top to bottom, and you remember a card, and you do this and you do that, and then later you're like, so somebody here, we need somebody to be thinking of a card. Somebody, you saw a card. Nobody has any idea how he saw that card. No, because everything that was happening before was very chaotic. Maybe he does, but it doesn't matter, because the point is he has a card, and now we're gonna do something that's gonna be very direct and very strong. So like the way we got to this point doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point.
But the magic, the effect shouldn't be confusing at all. The effect should be clear and direct.
Yeah, exactly. You can still have a really chaotic handling without it tainting like the overall picture, as long as they know
Yeah, you could have
what
a
you're thinking of.
chaotic procedure that's not the effect. It's
Yeah,
necessary for the effect, but it's not the effect. The effect
yeah,
shouldn't be confusing. But there could be a confusing procedure. That's okay. As long as that's
yeah,
not seen as too important.
yeah. That's an important distinction.
Yeah. From
Yeah,
Franco, what I've mainly learned is on like creating magic. The approach on like how to think about the tricks that you want to do. Franco has amazing taste. Like every trick he does is an absolute banger. And this taste of like being able to look at an effect and not only know if it's good or not, but kind of be able to tell like, oh yeah, I understand what this needs to be stronger, like I understand what's missing. Is something that it's really hard to teach and you can only develop through, in my eyes, being around people with good taste, and you kind of start catching on to it. So it's like it's kind of hard, but or you're born with good taste and like lucky. But yeah, I think taste is one of the most important elements of magic, because you could have zero skill and then only choose to do tricks that require zero skill, and if they're really good tricks, great. So it's like taste at the end of the day is what it comes down to. Like nothing else matters but if the trick is good.
yeah, yeah. And I remember you released an ebook with him, Vital, right? And
Vital,
you
yeah.
can tell in that book that you guys have a very similar approach to how you structure magic and create
Yeah.
it. Did you guys, from what I've heard from that, you guys just kind of hit it off straight away and just like immediately started.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I think like the way in which we jam is very hard to do. Like I don't do it with too many other magicians because it's just something that's a little hard. You have to have a certain level of confidence in your own ideas to be like presenting as many as you can. But at the same time, you have to not like enough each one of the ideas so that if the other guy completely shits on it and like criticizes it, you can be like, okay, let's move on. So like when we're jamming on some idea, there's a lot of ways that tricks come about. One of them is we'll think of a concept that's interesting. So whatever, and I mean, a concept that's interesting can mean literally anything. So for example, there's this scene from a movie that we saw that inspired, I think, a really interesting concept. You go up to the spectator and say, look, in the next 20 seconds, two things are going to happen. That's it. That's like
Yeah,
that's a very hooking premise. You say that, it's like, oh shit, okay, well, what's gonna happen? So like you say that in the beginning, you're hooked. So we think of that and we're like, okay, that's sick. Now, what is it? What is it that you do in the next 20 seconds? And then there you have an effect, and then you need to work on a method. Or maybe we start from a method and so on. But like we'll talk about these and we'll have 200 of these going on during the whole conversation. And if each one of them is super meaningful to us and we're like, this is like my baby, like look at this idea, then we're never going to be able to move on. So we need to be able to
yeah,
criticize things and be like, okay, this is shit, next one, like and keep going to kind of filter and get to the good stuff as quick as possible. And like that's hard to do because you need to have a similar approach on what you want to achieve, like what kind of effects you want to achieve, and you also have to have a similar approach on what kind of methods you like. It just so happens that we love the same style of methods. There are a
yeah,
couple of things method wise that we tend to disagree, but those are super nuanced. Like, if you see the whole spectrum of magic, like we're pretty close to what we do. So it's cool. And like creating with Franco made me better in like a lot of different aspects because you see his ideas, you're like, oh, I see how you thought of that. That's really good. And then that helps you think of things. So like, I mean, I don't know how much you can take from what I'm saying here, but I guess if I give any advice is like be around really good magicians if you can, try to jam with them.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. And there's such a big difference, between trying to brainstorm stuff by yourself and even just with one other person. Like it's so much more than the sum of the parts. You just start like connecting things together that you can't do by yourself.
Because most of the times, a jam session between two magicians is here's this, and you go sick. Here's this, and I go sick. Here's this, and we keep
Yeah,
going. Like we don't really get anywhere there. You have to kind of explore on each other to be like, oh, what if you did that? And you're like, oh, that's interesting. What if you know? And it's like
yeah.
you have to get used to it. It's a style of interaction that maybe but it's really good. It's my favorite thing to do is to come up with magic.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, that's a good transition actually, because another thing I was wanting to ask you about is your approach to creating stuff. We've talked about this a bit in the past,
Hmm.
but uh, you do have a quite a creative style, especially with how you approach plots that already exist, whether it's the biddle trick or sandwich trick or something like that. You have a lot of very creative methods for those things and presentations as well. And I know it's always hard to kind of knuckle down a thought process, and you definitely don't have to define it in any way. But I'm just curious if you wanted to talk about that a bit. How do you approach it, coming up with this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the creative process is one of the biggest like mysteries, like how do we come up with things? And I think there's a couple of things. So when I started coming up with stuff along with Franco, we tried to get to this style that we called conceptual magic, which means you're going to start from a concept that's already interesting and then try to build an effect. So, and that could mean, literally anything. It could be, for example, like if you're gonna vanish a card, you could talk about like the newest camouflage technology. You're like, I got my hands on a new camouflage technology.
Mm.
Oh, okay. What does that mean? It's like that's more interesting than going, I'm gonna make a card disappear. So it's like, you want to try to get to these concepts, these things that are intriguing. And it's like, why is the effect worth watching in the first place? Well, it's because I'm talking about this thing that you want to hear. And it's like some of them could be the simplest thing. You could say one sentence and that's already like very hooking. Maybe it's not even about what you say. Maybe it's about some sort of image that you create. So we have this effect in Vital that has uh
Oh,
this
I love
image.
this one. I remember
Yeah,
this.
that has this image. And we thought of this image first. We were like, this is interesting, this image, like one finger on each card. What does this mean? So we made an effect that kind of has this. And it's like the concept there is just this image, but that's okay. It's an image that we thought was intriguing. And if we saw that, we're like, if I saw this, I'd be interested in like what's happening there. So it's like, it's about that. And a lot of times we think of the concept first. A lot of times we think of effect first. We're like, it'd be really cool if this happened. How can we make that happen? And I mean, I started creating magic when I was 14, 15. So I've been coming up with stuff for like 7 years. Uh, I think when it gets to the point where I've been coming up with stuff for like 20 years, I'll have a lot more insights into this. But right
Mm.
now, what I can say is that I got a lot better at figuring out methods because I just did it a lot. Like at the beginning, when I would come up with an effect, the method would suck. And like nowadays, I think it's because of taste. If I think of an effect, I can almost always think of a method for it, but I can also tell if that's a good method or not. It's easy to come up with a bad method, for anything. For the most impossible thing they can name, you could come up with a bad method. To come up with a good method, it has to do with taste. It has to do with knowing a lot of methods. So you have to like study a bunch of different stuff. Areas outside of card magic. Like if you want to be a really good card magician, study other areas in card magic. Study other art forms in magic. Like get yourself out there. Because if you only study card magic, you're gonna come up with the stuff that everybody's been coming up with. If you want to come up with stuff that nobody's been coming up with, you have to get inspiration from sources nobody's getting inspiration from. So like yeah.
Yeah, I love that concept of like if you master one thing, you can master everything. Where as soon as you get really good at one specific skill, even if it's totally unrelated to another area, you can always find ways to improve both just based off your knowledge of one.
Yeah.
I remember one example I heard was like Homer Leewag is really good at cooking, and he gets a lot of crossover between cooking and magic in terms of how he thinks about things. That he realizes there's a lot in common. Uh, what are some of those things for you? Like, what are you interested in outside of magic that kind of informs how you think about magic?
So one of my biggest hobbies outside of magic is chess. And
Mm.
I definitely think there's a correlation because in chess, nobody knows. I mean, there are positions and positions. So unless you can see this is forced checkmate, like unless that is the case, you don't know that a move is the best move. Nobody knows. If you put it on a computer, he doesn't know. This is just the computer's best guess. And we know that because you can put a computer to play a computer and one might win because it's like
Yeah.
nobody knows. And nobody knows because there's more moves than you could ever have time to calculate. So it's like nobody knows. And in Magic, it's kind of like the same thing. Oh, what's the best method? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what the best method is. So everybody just kind of does their method. However, in chess, there's this idea that there is a best move. Even if nobody knows, there has to be the best move in the position. It's this one. And I think it's the same in Magic. I think there is the best method. I don't think it's necessarily arbitrary. Like I don't think it depends on opinion. I think some effects, this is the best method. And I think when you find those methods, you kind of feel it. You're like, "Oh, this is it." Like this makes too much sense. Like, this is for this effect, this is the method. And this approach, even if this isn't correct, even if there isn't an absolute best, I think it's good to think this way because a lot of times I get to things that are extremely like satisfactory for like what I was trying to achieve. And I only feel that way because I'm striving for like the best one, kind of believing that it exists. If I'm like, it's whatever you think, I think that, then I'm gonna do things that are suboptimal because I'm like, I like this, you like this, there's no better, it's just opinion. But if I
Yeah.
think there is a better, I'm not necessarily just like, I'm gonna hyper analyze. And by consequence, I think my tricks are like very fooling and the handlings are well developed because I'll be happy with the trick once I think I legit found like the best handling.
Mm. But it also depends on the context, right? Because there could be a best method for you, but for someone entirely different, it's going to
Yeah,
be,
yeah, that's the
that
thing.
kind of
Like
chaotic handling or whatever it is. Yeah.
the best method depends on the effect.
Mm.
Because the method, most often than not, determines the effect. If the method was different, the effect would look different. Like, it's very rare that you'll have interchangeable methods where you could use any of them and the effect would look exactly the same. That's kind of rare. Like, that happens, but it's not like that's super common. Usually, changing the method changes the look of the effect. So, you're kind of thinking, what's the best this effect could look? Then it has to be this method, you know?
Mm. Yeah, but there is also, I think it definitely depends on the effect, but also even on something as nuanced as like the context within your that you're performing within and the style that you have as a magician. Like I
Or
reckon
the
all of those
moves you
things
like to do. Like it's maybe you really like this control, and then when you do something, you use this control, and somebody else does, and then does a different control, but they do that one a lot better. So like, yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
okay, yeah. I'm not trying
yeah,
to find the best one for everybody. I'm trying to find the best one for me. Like I don't. That's what I.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
my.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I love that idea of like, and something I've been trying to think of, trying to kind of incorporate in my own magic recently is that idea of like finding the best method. Well, maybe not always method, but often with presentation as well. But finding that best method or presentation in the moment, and like
Mm,
having pre-prepared. Obviously, you've got a toolbox, right, of things that whether it's presentations or methods. But there's something so cool about kind of tailoring your effect to the moment, uh, which I really love. That I think that is really why I love sleight of hand so much, is because you can you can make every performance like tailored to its environment.
Yeah, sleight of hand is cool because like especially card magic sleight of hand is so versatile and adaptable and like if in the middle of a trick something happens, you're like, well, the card needs to go from here to there. It's a lot of ways that could happen. Now I can't do the one I was planning, so I'll like do another one. It's like that's not necessarily true for like other objects. Sometimes you have to do this method, and if that method's not going to work, you can't improvise a different path. With card magic, there's just 30 different ways to do everything. But like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about the fact that you can't really do jazz magic in with many other props.
Like if you're jazzing with coins, I mean, you're doing like vanishes, appears, maybe changes. Like if you're
Yeah,
jazzing with, I mean, I improvise with cards all the time, and I'm legit coming up with effects on the spot. like things I've never done before, and I wasn't thinking I was gonna do them 5 seconds ago, but like now we're doing it.
Yeah, yeah, man. That's card magic is. I don't know. I wonder if I'll ever change my mind around whether
That's
card
that's
magic
that's
is the
another
best kind of
thing.
magic.
Here's another thing. This is, I think, really good. So Dani DaOrtiz taught me a lot about the attitude of improvising. And that's a huge thing for me, which is when I go to do tricks, I don't know what I'm going to do. Sometimes that means I don't know what trick I'm going to do. I have a couple of tricks in mind. I'll pick one and do it. Sometimes that means I literally don't know what I'm going to do. I go shuffle and I don't know what trick I'm about to perform. And I go pick a
Mm,
card and I don't know what trick I'm about to perform. And I maybe peek it so that at least I know it. And I go put it shuffle. And I don't know what trick I'm about to, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what am I, maybe I produce it somehow, and you're low key just full up improvising. And a lot of times you can use things from the moment to kind of improvise. So, for example, uh, a friend of mine had a deck laying around, and I saw the Jokers, and the Jokers looked like a flight ticket because the deck was like airplane topic,
mm,
really. And you could see that the seat was 4A. So I looked at that, and I'm like,
interesting.
huh, we be producing four aces right now. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. Yeah,
So I
yeah.
go to the Jokers. I'm like, "Yo, these Jokers are nice. Like, check them out." And they're like, "Guys, the Jokers from my deck." I was like, "Yeah, I like them. I like them." I did this. Say stop, say stop, up. Ace, 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 ace. He's like, "What?" And I'm like, "And the Jokers knew it. Look, four ace. It was just like his smallest, like, adding on to the thing, but but it's the type of things that you can do because I know a way to produce four aces. I saw that it made sense. So it's like
Mm.
you have this huge toolbox that you can improvise effects with, and I think I learned that mostly from Danny.
Yeah, yeah. Danny is one of the best at that, I think. From that, well, I came to Danny at the same kind of with the same kind of headspace as you mentioned before. With like, I thought I knew everything. I was like, yep, this is sweet. And then just his magic is hits different as a magician in that kind of mindset.
So you were asking me like who are some of my inspirations? I think it's very easy to pin down like areas of my magic and why it is that way. So like the way I come up with magic and like why the effects that I come up with are pretty good, if they are, it's all Franco. All on Franco. It's all because we've jammed a lot and I learned a lot from him. So credits go to him. Why I have good thoughts on like theory and philosophy, or why I even love magic in the first place, is all Garrett. Garrett Thomas is like the reason I care about magic. Because when I was younger, I used to love magic, but the reason I used to do it is because I like to like get attention and like it would get me attention. People would think I'm cool. And
Mm.
then I saw Garrett talk about why he did magic and why he loved magic, and I was like, it made so much sense, and it was the kind of thing that clicked to me where I was almost like, yo, I feel this way and I didn't even know I felt this way you know it's like crazy. So and it made me think deeper about it as an art form, not just as like, these are things you do to impress people. It's like, no, bro, these are things you can do to change people's lives. You can create memories that they'll have for the rest of their lives. You can show them the most incredible thing maybe that they'll ever see. It's a pretty crazy position to be in. It's like the gift of an impossible moment. Like I could talk forever, but like Garrett's very responsible for that. And then another person who actually helped me out a lot was David Williamson. He was one of my biggest inspirations growing up. Of course, he's like the best magician of all time. And then
Nice.
I met him when I was 16. I met him, and we became pretty close friends. We used to go on calls literally every week, once a week, and just talk about magic. And I would share with him my new ideas. I introduced to him some of my friends. We ended up making that call bigger. That was during the pandemic, and we used to have like a weekly call with amazing magicians. That started as just a weekly call, me and Dave, and then it became me introducing my friends to Dave, and then it became me and my friends and Dave, and like we just did these
Awesome.
like so many. I don't want to start name dropping here for no reason, but so many unbelievable magicians were on that call. I met Garrett Thomas because of that call, and like I met a lot of great guys that I didn't know at the time, and then later I met them in person, but like became friends because of some of the things that also really helped me back when I was like 16, 17 was just Dave and the pandemic. And because of the pandemic, Dave was like willing to spend a lot of time with me. It's pretty good.
Yeah, well, I was wondering, I mean, with if we kind of go back to that topic of elegance for a
Yeah.
moment, Because just as with chaos, there is a fine line between chaos and confusion. With elegance, there is a fine line between like beauty and being too meticulous.
Mm,
You know, there's a lot of magicians who handle the cards too cleanly and clinically, where it kind of feels like there's stuff going on. Yeah, exactly. So how do you ride that line?
yeah.
You know, and how is like I mean, you've talked about Franco before. How's that informed it?
So I think it has to do with naturalness. And naturalness can be defined best by Tony Cheng. He goes, wait, is that Tony Cheng? No, that's not Tony Cheng. Why did I think that was Tony Cheng? It's so funny. That's from The Jerk. So The Jerk has the best definition of naturalness. I think it's because Tony Cheng talks about a slightly different thing. So Tony Cheng talks about how like moves should be like the least amount of that's why I got confused. Tony Cheng and the Jerks both talk about this concept. I hadn't realized that before. Like that they both talk about this because I've spoken about that's so interesting. Anyways, my brain's exploding.
Maybe Tony Chang is the jerks.
Okay, too many plot twists. No, but so this idea is that um, naturalness and suspicion kind of walk together. If something's natural, it's not suspicious. If it's suspicious, it's not natural. So the Jerks talks about suspicion. Tony Cheng talks about naturalness, but it's like the same thing that you're talking about, just in opposites. So Tony Cheng says that naturalness comes from doing things with like the least amount that you would need to do the thing. So here's what I mean.
Hmm.
Pick up the deck. Okay. That's natural. But if somebody goes, that's unnatural because you don't need to do that much to pick up the deck. And humans are efficient.
Yeah.
So anytime you're not efficient, that's suspicious. So like if I went cut the deck and you went, okay. But if I went cut the deck and you went, that's suspicious because you don't need to do that much to cut the deck. That's the whole so that's like the Jerks argument, which is amazing. He says suspicion. Maybe I can find the quote, but I think I remember it. He says suspicion is brought by the unnecessary expenditure of energy on the part of the magician. So anytime you use
Yeah.
more energy than you would need to accomplish something, that's suspicious. And then Tony Cheng talks about the other one, but it's the same concept. But it's like naturalness comes when you do the least amount to achieve. So
Yeah.
somebody picking a card or putting back or shuffling, you should always do like, if I was trying to do that, what's the least that I would need to do? If that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess as with any rule, there are exceptions, like adding flourishes
But
uh, into your magic.
flourishes are not accomplishing anything. Like when you do a cardistry move,
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
not like you're doing a cardistry move for them to pick a card, or it's not like you're going, "Let me give the cards a mix." You're
Yeah.
showing cardistry. It's like it's a different thing. Um, Suspicion in this case, I think it's mostly for when you're trying to do a move that looks like another thing. And the Jerks basically says it'll only look suspicious if you're doing more than you would need to do the other thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I also love what Divernon says about that with like be natural, and what I mean by that is to be
yeah,
yourself. Because, if you look at Leonard Green, he's not doing the most efficient way to cut the cards or whatever, but he's doing the most efficient way for him to
yeah,
do it.
yeah. You can tell
And
that like it's consistent
for
with
his
the rest of
character.
his style
Yeah.
and so on. Yeah, that's also important.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the same with like any kind of chaotic style, is that you're not always like the most clinically efficient, but it's about really how it feels, I guess, more than the actual
Yeah,
actions.
yeah.
Anything else you want to say on that, or you're all good?
I think we said it all.
Great. Okay, well, I'm going to go to a couple of my other questions that I have written down. Okay, here's an interesting one. Who is one magician that you love who hardly anyone knows about?
Um, there's a couple. Because I have some
Go
friends
on.
that are my age, and because they're my age, they didn't become too famous yet. So like, I could name them, or I could name magicians that are older, just not like kind of underground. So that's almost different categories. From my from my age, from my age range, If you guys have not heard the name Yanai El before, great. Yanai is a magician from Israel, and like I've known him since I don't know 4 or 5 years. Uh, he's like for sure one of the greatest magicians from the next generation. You know, he's like my age, so he's not yet there, but like he's for sure one of the next great ones. Like he's insane. He has unreal taste, like one of the best taste magicians I've ever seen. Every single effect he's ever shown me is a ridiculous banger. Like he only shows me not just like strong stuff, but stuff that you're like, bro, people would go nuts if they saw that. Like every single one of his ideas is amazing. And yeah, Yanai, like I'm very lucky that we're friends. Yanai is amazing. On magicians that are a little older and maybe you should know, but maybe don't, there's a magician from the UK called Ross Taylor who super inspired my work. Like, Ross was a big inspiration for
Yeah.
me because Ross is the perfect example of like unreal level of skill, but also there's a lot of hands off stuff and chaotic and like you don't understand what's happening. So it's like best of both worlds. And I think I started seeing Ross, and that was one of the things that for sure got me interested in like, oh yeah, I want to be technically skilled, but also do hands off, you know.
Oh man, yeah, I love Ross's stuff, especially his gambling stuff. I haven't actually looked at much of his
So that's the
unprepared
thing.
stuff,
Like,
but
I don't care too much about Ross's gambling stuff.
yes,
For me, Ross's gambling stuff is proof that he's technically like God, but it doesn't
oh
matter.
yeah,
Like,
his
his mentalism and hands-off work is where it really shines. He has an A-can that legit might be like the best impromptu A-can, like shuffle deck A-can, no stack, no preparation,
wow,
like, which is pretty big claims, but like, yeah, it's nuts. Ross is amazing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He has a video of the Stephen Skull on his YouTube channel, and that's the first place I saw it.
Mm.
Well, I mean, I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but it's the first place I saw it where I was like, okay, this can be done, and I think you can do it deceptively because I mean, it definitely wasn't perfect, but I've never seen anyone with a perfect Stephen Skull.
Also,
So
I
yeah,
let me do this real quick because if any of you guys want to know more about the Seiken that I'm claiming is so good, it's on Ross Taylor's book 43210. I won't say which one. Like there's five Eikens in there. One of them is the goat. I won't say which one. Read it and you'll figure it out. But get that book. It's really good.
great. Love a bit of promotion. That's fantastic. Um, okay, well then, who are the kind of older guys that you're talking about then?
So, well, by older, I was meaning Ross, like around 20, 30, like
Oh,
because
right.
because
Okay.
much older, like on 40s and 50s. I don't know if there's anybody. I mean, the people who I look up to, I'm assuming everybody knows, like Michael Weber or like Ossie or like it's not anybody super underground, at least not that I can think of. Um, but yeah. Oh, this one is amazing.
Great.
You might not know him. It's a French mentalist named Gabriel Whirlin. Gabriel
No, I've never heard of him.
Great, great. Gabriel is amazing. He has some of the best work on ambiguity that I've ever seen. Like, and that's really specific. Like, work on ambiguity? What does that mean, right? So
Yeah.
he comes up with these sentences that are ambiguous, and it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts because he'll go choose this or this, and then you choose, and then he shows you the prediction, and then you're like, what? How? And the method is if you chose the other one, the prediction also works, and it's like what?
Wow.
And he has so
Wow.
many of those, like so many of those, and like work on
Mm,
ambiguity also for like not for the revelation but also for the setup for like giving them a choice and it's like an ambiguous so it's like not even equivocate it's like it's almost like hyper advanced equivocate it's like using language to its full potential.
yeah. Wow. That sounds amazing. What was his name again?
Gabriel Whirlin.
Gabriel Rowland.
Yeah.
Let me write that down.
Werlen. Whirlin. Worth looking it up.
Great. That's
Gabriel
exactly
has
the
a
kind
trick.
of
This is the
stuff I
trick.
love.
Legit. And when I saw it, I was like, "What is the other out?" Like how could there be another out? Like that's the thing. Gabriel and outs is amazing. He has a trick. This is the trick. I won't tell you the method, but this is the trick. He goes,
Mhm.
"I don't have a coin here. So I'm gonna write down the outcome of a coin flip, so like heads or tails, as if we flipped, but I don't have a coin, so like I'll just write down an outcome, and we're gonna play a game of heads and tails. However, I am the best player of all time in heads and tails, and in fact, if you beat me, you'll be the first one because I have won 37 times in a row. And in fact, winning heads and tails 37 times in a row is harder than winning the lottery. And then he starts talking about all that. You're like, holy, okay. And he goes, we're gonna play one round. You get to pick heads or tails. And then you go heads. And you're like, sure? You're like, yeah. Take a look at the paper. And you open it up and it says heads. And you're like, what the fuck? And he goes, everybody always picks heads. And then he shows you an envelope, and it has two envelopes. One of them says tails, but there's nothing else on it. And one of them says heads, and there's a lot of marks on it. And then he opens up the tails envelope, and it's empty. And then he opens up the heads envelope, and there's a lot of pieces of paper that says heads, just like the one from today. And you're like, I'll add this to the collection, you know? And you're just like,
Dang.
so he's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, well, I want to get more deep because I love the deep stuff about magic. Why do you love magic?
Ooh, straight up. Boom, there we go. Bah! Like, okay, why do I love magic? There's a couple of reasons. One of them is because I feel like with magic, I can give them an experience that they can't get anywhere else. So, like, let's say I'm dating and I give my girl a guitar. She's like, "Oh, this one's so nice. My ex gave me a guitar." You know, you'd be like, but like with them, you can give them something that nobody else can give. You can give them a moment that cannot even exist. It's like the only way to even experience that in the first place is through magic. So it's an experience that they can't have almost. And it's like that's fascinating because if it's something that doesn't exist, that's not possible, logically, maybe this won't be super intuitive, but if you think about it logically, there's a lot more things that aren't possible than things that are. So when that's your playground, when your playground
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the
yeah, right.
things that are not possible, bro, that's like there's an infinitude of those, and like you'll never run out. You know, it's not like at some point you'll be
Mm.
like, dude, I'm tired of magic. This is all just the same. Like there's an infinite. If it's all just the same, you're lacking creativity. You can go so many directions, and the
Yep.
level of effect you can give somebody, there's very few art forms that I think get to something like this. Where like music, for example, you could be listening to music as you have dinner, and it doesn't bother anybody. In fact, it's kind of nice. But music could change your life. You go to a concert of your favorite artist, and it changes your life. Or
Yeah.
somebody you love play a song for you, and it changes your life. You know, I don't know how many art forms have that ability, but magic is one of them. You could be in a restaurant chilling, magician comes to your table, does some things, it's enjoyable. You go back home, you're like, that was a lovely evening. Or you could go to a magic show and see the craziest things you've ever seen. Or, and then we get to the third category, which is just like music
Mm.
if you sing for your girlfriend. You could have the magic tricks that you do for your friends and family that you couldn't even do in a show. Magic tricks that are personal. They use pieces of information that have to
Yeah.
do with them. And nobody could have come up with but you because it's about them. And it's stronger than any gift you could give them because it's the gift of a moment they can't buy, you know? So like
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's exactly the like it's almost like kind of Jerksian as well, that kind of concept of like curating your
yeah,
magic to a specific moment.
the tricks I'll do in my show and the tricks I'll do for my friends and family completely different. The tricks I do in the show is like
Mm.
commercial strong magic that I come up with to be practical, impactful, highly fooling. The stuff for my friends, maybe I'll spend 6 months working on this trick that I'll only do once, but it doesn't matter
Yeah,
because it's
yeah,
the
yeah,
craziest thing
yeah,
this
yeah.
guy's ever gonna see, you know. And it's like I can give
Yep.
examples. I'm going to fly to New Year's to a beach this year. So this is
Mhm.
actually a trick I haven't done yet. This is a trick I'm planning to do. So this is a trick I'm going to do for my sister.
Okay.
We have a house that's like close to the beach ish. You can walk to the beach. So my idea is my sister goes to the beach. I stay at the house. And then she FaceTimes me like, yo, come over. Because that always happens. She's always like, yo, come over, join us at the beach. And I'm like, okay, okay, give me a second. In fact, can I show you something? We're on FaceTime. And she sees me running and jumping into the pool. And when I dive in the pool, the call hangs up and I come out of the ocean, like in the beach with her, and I'm like, "Yo, what's up?" You know, and like
Oh,
I
that would
haven't
be
done
sick.
yet. I'm planning to do it. I
Yeah.
hope my sister doesn't watch this, but there's zero chance she watches this. So like, if
Oh,
she
thanks,
finds this, if
Antonio.
she finds this out before I show her the effect, I'm gonna lose it. But that's not gonna happen, so it's fine. But this effect, it's like
Yeah.
imagine experiencing something like that. That's like that's not a card trick. That's a, that's something you do. That's the stuff that these amazing movies stories or the stuff that you tell. It's like, dude, this guy, this thing happened. So it's like you want to try to achieve that type of effect, and you can. It's possible. These effects are possible. You only have to come up with them and then work on the method. Oh, but it's going to be really hard work. Yeah, it will. But it will give your friends and family the craziest experiences that they'll ever have. It's like it's why I love.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's almost the work doesn't even matter, at that point. Like I made a video recently on this, on just being in the moment, and it's kind of like as a more general way to do it because you can like curate tricks, but even just being in the moment and curating how you perform to that exact moment with that exact person is just why I love magic. You have those real moments of magic where you're, you know, you're connecting with someone on an entirely different level that you can in any other way, like you said.
Yeah. So I think a
Um,
magic show is almost like a glimpse into my world. Somebody comes into a magic show, I'm like, this is my stuff. This is what I like. This is what I found amazing. However, when I do magic for
mm,
my friends and family, it's much more like, oh, this is clearly an experience designed for, like, they feel this is clearly an experience designed for me. Like, clearly, this is not a trick that he'll show anybody else. And, like,
yeah, yeah,
sometimes you see a trick and you're like, he's done this before thousands of times. That's why it looks amazing. All of those tricks, it's like for sure they think you've never done that before. Sometimes they don't even realize they're in a magic trick until it's too late, which is what I like,
yeah,
And so, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like a lot of, as much as I love cards, a lot of the time that is stuff, it's got to be stuff that's just totally like ordinary, right? Like cards are ordinary, but you do
I
know what
know
I mean?
what
Like
you mean. I know what you
you,
mean. It's the thing that you can't borrow cards. That's what it's all. That's what it comes down to. It's magic with
yeah, yeah,
items you
yeah,
can borrow versus magic with items you can't borrow. It's like although
yeah,
cards are normal, think about the difference between doing a 15-minute set after you pull the deck out of your pocket or a 15-minute set after you show up to somebody's house for like a you know and he's like, yo, I got cards around, I heard, like it's complete with they're gonna be like, and he did it with my cards, like, that's a thing that they mention, that they talk about, you know so like,
yeah,
and this trick, the beach trick, it's not a trick that's really done with borrowed objects. It's not done with objects at all. It's just like more of a conceptual trick. But like that kind of thing, it's good that card tricks exist, because if only those existed, now that's almost like, first of all, really hard to like only do those. But also it's hard to value something if that's the only thing you know. But if my family, which they have, seen a
yeah,
lot of card tricks over the years, now when they see something like this, it's like a lot more valuable. And it's not like the card tricks are bad, but like nothing gets to this level.
yeah. No, 100%. I totally get it. Yeah,
There's another beat trick
yeah.
that's
That's
actually a card trick. I did this one. I did this 2 years
okay.
ago. So this is a story that I actually did. So was at the beach. I had
Hmm.
cards. I went, take one of these, take one, and I went, look, we're gonna rip a corner off. Keep this corner, put it in your pockets, whatever. The rest of the card, destroy it, and throw it in the sea. Throw it in the sea. I'm like, don't worry, it's paper. It's not gonna kill fish. It's okay. It's all good. No, no, it's a bit, but no, it's paper. Whatever. It's all good. And then we're kind of having this discussion, and it's like, and then she looks and she's like, wait, what? And there's a bottle floating in the water. And then she reaches,
Oh,
grabs it, pulls out the cork. There's a piece of paper inside with a little ribbon. She unribbons it, opens a piece of paper. It's a map. The starting point is clearly that thing over there, the tree with the bench. Like, that's clearly where she starts. And you take the amount of
mhm.
steps that, like, it's followed in the map. And then when you get to the X, you dig and there's a little chest. And then she opens it up, and it's the restored card with the missing piece, and it's like the matching piece. And she was like, "What the
Oh,
fuck?"
yeah,
So it's like we went on a treasure hunt. Like that's the type of effect I want to give my spectators. It's like a bottle on the water. Like, what is
yeah,
that? Like, oh, it's a treasure. It's a treasure map, bro. And the line I had right before the reveal, which was really sick. Right before we opened the chest, I was like, I wonder how long this chest has been here for. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, I mean, I'm sure it's been here for a long time. She's like, yeah. I was like, before you even ripped up that card. And then she was like, no, you know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That I mean that yeah, it's a perfect example of like elevating card magic beyond like
But it's not like that's your practical, let's do it at the
yeah, yeah,
next Walk
yeah,
Around
exactly,
gig.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. Like you do have to have like you can't commercialize that
but
really.
I don't think,
You've got to
that
have.
like when I'm coming up with these, the last thing I'm thinking is, oh, I'm gonna publish this, you know? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
that,
of
but
course,
that's
of course.
that's the style of the other one. When I'm thinking of tricks for shows, a lot of times I'm trying to think, oh, if I publish this, like, what would other people think?
Yeah, yeah. No, what I was meaning by that is like that's the reason they're so special is because they, like you said, they can only exist in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Ah, so good. Um, oh, okay. Here's a curveball. I mean, we've gone deep. I want to go some shallow ones now. What are the worst tricks you've ever come up with?
One of the worst tricks I ever came up with.
You don't have to share methods or anything. You can just describe
It's
them.
it's because like most of the worst tricks I've ever came up with, I forgot. It's not
Yeah, that's true.
like
That's true.
so there's a lot of like bad tricks that I just forgot. So it's like so anything I show you will definitely not be in the top 300 worst tricks because those I all forgot.
So yeah, you've
So
been those
like
instantly.
but like I could pick a trick that's not really good and and I can show it. So the points
No,
I
no, you
show
don't have to.
something,
No, no,
it's so funny. It's like show something you came up with, but that's like not too good. I'm like, okay, I can show it.
no, no. Sometimes when I ask me that question, you have like something that immediately comes to
Then
mind.
you're like, oh my
Uh,
god, how did I ever think of that? That's so
how did
stupid.
I ever, or like, it's also like, how did I ever think that was good? Like,
Yeah, how did I ever
um,
think that was good? Maybe there is a trick that I've like performed a lot and only realized it was bad like eventually. Maybe this is. I mean, it's pretty hard. I'm not really sure, but there are a lot that I forgot like 100%. But yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
sorry, I don't have an
yeah.
example in mind.
That's okay. What are some? We'll shift tack again. What are some topics that you wish were talked more about in magic?
Wow. That's interesting. Topics that I wish were talk. I guess what that comes down to is what are some of the things that if magicians had in mind more often would improve magic in general. So
Yeah,
like
yeah,
if magicians had in mind more often that the effect like well okay first things first, this is not really a topic that should be talked about, I guess. I'm sorry, but I am kind of getting to what you're asking. I think people care too much about publishing, so there's too many tricks being published that just like they like I'm sorry, this should not have been published. Like back when I was growing up, when something was published, it's because. And nowadays anybody can publish anything, and it's just lost the essence of what it means to like publish an idea. So I wish people cared more about what they published.
mm,
So I don't know how that comes into what they would talk about, but like yeah, that's one thing for sure. And then the other thing, kind of on the same line, is like I wish people understood that it's okay to come up with really good effects that don't have good methods if that's what you put up. So, like, I could publish an ebook with 50 effects that have no methods, but the effects are unbelievable. Sorry, I'm not like, let me rephrase that. I'm not saying I could do that. I'm saying somebody could do that,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
if that happened and I bought that book, I would be extremely happy. I would be like amazing
yeah,
because now it's like now I need to try to come up with methods for these. And if I come up with methods for even one of them, it's unreal. And
yeah.
not only that, but maybe I can't come up with methods for any of these. But if it's 50 unbelievable premises, they can inspire me like for sure. So it's like
Mm,
those kind of things for me are much more valuable than the newest version of the sandwich trick and the next best A can. And it's like honestly, I only care about a trick that already exists if you're putting out the absolute definitive best version. For me, a trick should only be published under two conditions: if it's the best version of that plot, or if it's a completely new plot. If you're publishing a lesser version of a plot, why would you do that?
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
maybe just because it's an innovative method. Maybe that's why. It's like, oh, it's a new method. Okay, then find a new plot. Because, like, if it's a new method and it's a really good new method, you don't apply it to... Because it's a lesser version of the plot. Nobody's going to do it. They're going to do the better one. So, like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, exactly. And back onto the idea of like a book with presentations. It's like that Only Ideas book, right? Like, I just think that's such a cool premise because presentations are probably, or at least for me, I find presentations like by far the hardest part of creating magic is coming up with really unique, interesting presentations. Because like you say, methods are a dime a dozen. It's pretty easy to put together a method for an effect.
Yeah.
But the thing that really elevates it is like having a premise that's really interesting. And
I have a premise that I came up with years ago, and I was never able to find an effect for it. So I'll say it. If you come up with
okay,
something, click. And if any of you guys come up with something, let me know. DM me on Instagram. Here's the premise. What is the difference between a guess and a prediction? In other words, if I say blah, blah, blah will happen, how do you know if I'm guessing or predicting?
I love it.
It seems like you don't. It seems like there's no way to know. Well, maybe if the thing goes wrong, if the thing doesn't happen, you can be like, ah, he was guessing. But if the thing happens, there's no way to know if it was a guess or a prediction. So I was thinking about that, and I was like, how could you know? And I realized there is a difference. You can guess things from the past, but you can't predict things from the past. You can't predict the year that Einstein was born. That doesn't make any sense. But you can guess
Yeah,
the year Einstein was born. So that's a concept, that idea of like the difference between a guess and a prediction, and the fact that they work differently when applied to past information. That's a concept. I don't have an effect. I've thought about this for a long time, and I never came up with an effect that satisfied me. So I'm dropping that there. If you guys want to think about it, I think it's very intriguing to think about like, the difference between a guess and a prediction.
yeah, man, that's good. I love that kind of stuff. That tickles my magic brain. Yeah, yeah. That's part of the reason I love magic. Is just I mean, you know me. We've had very deep conversations, and
Yes.
I love thinking deeply about things. Uh, and I was really surprised when I found out how deep magic is. Like you can go on for hours talking about the most niche topic of magic, and the psychology and philosophy and history
Yeah.
of it, and it's so refreshing.
Like it all comes down to magic is cool because it's not real. If it was real, it would be one of the other things that are real. Like this is real, this is real. But magic is not real.
Mm.
And there's not many things you get to experience which aren't real. Magic is one of the few, you know? And it's
Wow, I've
like,
never heard of it like that. That's a
yeah,
really cool way of putting
yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah, as much as some magicians would love to believe they have real magic powers.
The whole point of why magic is cool is because it's not real. If you believe it's real, it's not magic anymore. It's whatever the real thing you're doing is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also as someone who likes sleight of hand, if I could do everything just like that, I would probably get pretty bored
Yeah.
of it.
Also, the jerks talked about this recently. If you went up to somebody and you read their mind and you just told them their name, they would think you found out their name somehow.
Hmm.
But if you did a magic trick with whatever procedure, literally any like the procedure could be say the alphabet to me. So what? Literally any bullshit that if you had real magic powers you wouldn't need.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now it's impactful. Now they're like, fuck, he reads minds. Guys, this guy, you know?
Yeah. And that's the great thing.
So,
Like you can use that as a method, just like find out information about them. I mean, that's creepy, right? That's the stalker mindset. Maybe I shouldn't be saying
yeah,
that, but
but
you can use that. Like plenty of people have.
you can use that as a method. You followed them home now. You know where they live. You know? Come on.
Great.
And then you can
That's
predict. Like,
gonna
do you live at
2025 methods are gonna involve more stalking.
I mean, honestly, for a lot of the effects that I designed for friends and family, you do need to get super creepy with what you're doing but it's for friends and family, so it's like not a stranger. But I'll give you an example. I
Yes,
have
please.
this idea. I still haven't developed the effect, but I have this idea of it would be really cool if a friend of mine wakes up, goes to the bathroom, and sees a note in the mirror, and the note says something, and then he's like, "Dad, did you leave that note?" He's like, "No." He's like, "Mom, did you leave that note?" She's like, "No." He's like, asks his brother. He's like, "No." He's like, "What?" And then he goes to school, goes to the school bathroom. There's a note in the mirror. It's clearly for him. It continues the first one. Now he's like, who's leaving these? If that kept going, I think it'd be really intriguing. It's like, who's communicating with me through like notes in the mirror? I don't know what the notes would say. I don't know what the effect is. This is just like, this is a concept I came up with, and I was like, this would be interesting. To go through this experience would be interesting. You know, very creepy. You could only do
Very
this to friends.
creepy.
But like it doesn't matter because I think if you're going through an experience like that, that's intriguing, that's interesting. It depends on what it all comes down to what the post-it note says. Like if the post-it note says you're gonna die, then it's not cool. But like if the post-it note's trying to maybe start a conversation, maybe I don't know. I don't know what it would be. Like there's many things it could be. But I think that concept is interesting. That he's getting somebody trying to communicate to him, and maybe it doesn't need to be post-it notes in the mirror. It can be something else. But this idea that somebody who he doesn't know who it is communicating with him and something's happening, And like, could I get him to follow instructions? Could I get him to be somewhere at a specific time? Like, I don't know. Like, be this place at this time. Will he go? I don't know. But that'd be sick. If you got a note in a mirror saying be there, would you be there?
It's the Antonio villain arc. Here we go.
But it's like those are the things that like the way I try to think about this is what would I want to experience? Like if I knew that friends of mine are at this very moment trying to come up with these crazy experiences to give me, I'd be so happy. That's amazing. Like I think that's the best thing I can do for them.
Yeah, it's almost like when you have like a whole bunch of friends like prank you really badly. Like
Yeah,
you'll be annoyed by the
yeah,
prank, but you're so thrilled that they went to all that effort just to kind of like entertain
exactly.
you. Like,
But this is like the ultimate prank. Like these are the best pranks. Again, it's like, what's kind of your goal in life? My goal in life is to have the people around me who I care about the most be constantly having amazing experiences. Like, and if at the end of their life they have crazy memories, and I was responsible for giving them those memories, that gives me a lot of like feeling of purpose.
yeah,
Because at the end of your life, all you have are your memories. And what makes up something memorable, like what makes a memory a long term memory,
mm,
the emotions attached to it. Every single long term memory you have is attached to an emotion. But not just that, it's also the first time that happened. Every long term memory you have is the first time that happened in some way. Like if it's not the first time, if it's the 17th time, you don't remember it. They all blend together. But if something different happens, now maybe you'll remember that. So we tend to
yeah,
remember new things more than anything else because our brains can learn from new experiences. So everything is like a new experience. With magic, you have a guaranteed new experience. You know for sure they've never seen that before. No one's ever seen that before. It's not even possible to have seen that before.
mm,
So it's a guaranteed new experience. And if you're tailoring it to them, you're going to get emotions. So it's almost like you walk around life with the knowledge and the ability to create lasting memories. And I think that's the best. Like you can't ask more out of life.
Are there any goals outside of magic that you have in general with your life? Like, they don't have to be super
So
deep. They could be deep, but they don't have to be.
to become a chess master before I die would be really
Interesting.
sick.
Okay, what's your definition of chess master?
So in chess, there is a specific rating that you have to achieve to be considered a master. And rating is just an amount of points that you have. And when you play a match against somebody else, you gain or lose rating points depending on the rating points. So I don't have a rating because right now I don't do chess competitions, but like I want to start doing it. I want to get my rating up on chess.com. I don't like honestly, this is super true. I don't have an account on Chess Online because I really like to play chess in person over the board.
Yep.
So I just don't really play online much. Now, online, if I were to have an estimation of what my rating is, I think it's around 18, 1900. For you to be a master, you have to be like 2200. And although that would seem like, I mean, I don't know if it seems
Yeah, it's
close or not.
exponentially.
Because the greatest player of all time is 2800. So if you think about it, he is like I'm closer to master than he is in rating points in a way, you know. But like to get from 1900 to 2200 is absolutely ridiculous. Like it's it's a dedication that doesn't even make sense. So like I would love to do it. I want to try to do it, but it's like really hard. But I love chess. It's like a huge passion.
Me, I used to really love chess. I have not played a game in a long time, so you would thrash me. But yeah.
Maybe we'll play a game at the session.
Oh no, yeah, okay. You have to go easy on me though.
Okay. Okay.
See, this is the play. I'm actually secretly 2100 rated on chess.com,
That'd
but
be crazy.
I'm just laying the groundwork, you know,
Yeah.
underestimate.
You're going go easy on me so that I don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so for anybody who's not too interested in chess, I don't know if what I'm about to say is interesting, but the reason I fell in love with chess was because I saw a scene in the TV show The Queen's Gambit
Hmm.
where they're playing chess in the car. She's driving and saying moves, and the guy is here replying, and they're just playing in their heads, speaking. And first, I went, first of all, what's a better game to play in the car than chess? Chess is like the craziest game. If you can play that in the car, like there's no better car game. Like that's the craziest one. But second of all, how interesting is it that that's even possible? That to play chess spoken is possible? Because it's not crazy that they can visualize the boards in their heads. Like that's okay. I mean, it is impressive. But what's crazy to me is the idea that playing chess spoken directly means that you have an exact recollection of the events. So if I watched one of the greatest chess games that was ever played being played live, and then I go back home and I tell you about it, my telling is as accurate as you being there watching it.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
that's a really good way of putting it.
that's crazy. That I don't know of anything else in life that's the case.
Hmm.
So like that's really that blew my mind. I was like, what? So I have a lot of like this is a part of my thing. I have a lot of chess games memorized, like classic, amazing chess games that I know the whole game and I could show you. And it's like I think that's amazing that I could show you one of the classic best game. Like I can't show you like a lot of like if I wanted to show you one of the best tricks, I'd be doing the trick. Like
Yeah,
it's my interpretation, it's my hand. Like I'm showing you this is the game, and I can be
yeah,
like, and when he played this, this is what was going through his mind. Like we know that
yeah.
because he played the move. So it's like that's crazy. I find that crazy.
That is insane because I've heard the same from a lot of like pro chess players where they just have a whole lot of games like memorized.
Yeah,
Is that
I have I could count, but I think I have 17 or 18 games memorized, something like that. So it's not like not crazy, but it's like
wow, that is
not bad.
crazy to me. Don't underplay that. Is that
I mean, I'm sure grandmasters have hundreds of games memorized.
yeah.
Like
Well, they're always the
yeah.
elite, but uh, is that a different memory system to usual, or is it because I from what I understand with chess, you can like it's it's not as difficult to memorize things as you think because you can remember positions and like uh
So funny enough, it's kind of like a magic trick.
okay,
Where there is so in chess there's opening, middle game, end game.
yeah,
The opening is the first few moves, but every first few move has been tested, so you can't really invent an opening.
yeah,
You were going to choose an opening that exists and you're going to play it. So if I know a famous chess game, what I have written down in my notes is the name of the game so that I can look it up later if I forget, and the opening. And so I have the opening written down, and from the opening, I can conclude what the game is because I've seen it before. So I'll get to the position in the opening where my opening knowledge ends, and I'm like, oh yeah, in this position she played this, and I remember it because, first of all, maybe that's not an opening that I play. So the only logical continuation is the only game I've seen in that opening. If you see hundreds of games in the same opening, I have no idea how you can differentiate between them. Like, I just write down the opening. If I had a lot of games with the same openings, I don't know what I would be writing down because I can't write down the whole game to remind me. So it's
mm.
like I don't know.
Are there
But also,
positions for like middle game, or is that just kind of it's loose and then it all comes together at the end?
yeah. So like, middle game is basically when the opening ends. So
Yeah,
as soon as the moves that have been tried out before ends, as soon as you play the first novelty, then it's a middle game.
yeah.
And then end game just means it's like there's less pieces on the board. But like in a theoretical sense, the end game is also solved in the same way that we know what the best openings are. We know what the best end game positions are, because when there's few pieces on the board, you can actually calculate all the moves and you can
Yeah.
know for sure what the best move is. But when there's all the pieces on the board, there's no computing power that can do it. So there's a fun thing that I like to tell people. If you don't understand how many chess games are possible, like if you don't think there's that many possible, listen to this, because I think it's mind blowing. So imagine you have a supercomputer, and this supercomputer will calculate 1 billion positions per second. So you let that supercomputer run. It's calculating 1 billion positions per second. You let it run. And you wait 1 billion years. And then you take one step. And then you wait another 1 billion years. And you take another step. And the computer's going. And you wait 1 billion and another step and another step. Eventually, you go around the Earth. When you do that, set aside a drop of water from the ocean. When you do the Earth again, set aside another drop. When you do the Earth again, another drop. When you empty the ocean, set a piece of paper on the floor, refill the ocean, take another step. When you empty the ocean again, another piece of paper, refill, and you keep doing that until that piece of paper hits the moon. And when that pile of paper hits the moon, the progress bar on how many chess positions you have calculated will still be on 0%.
Yeah, what? That's a magic presentation,
So,
right?
but this is factual. This is factual information. So, like, literally, there aren't enough. Like, if you had an amount of computers equal to the atoms in the universe, which is impossible because they would have to be made from the atoms in the universe, and they were calculating since the Big Bang, you still wouldn't get it. So it's just you can't get it. It's too big of a number.
Wow. Wow, I had no
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, that example is really crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, that example is very crazy.
That's ridiculous. Okay, well, let's go back to magic for a bit. And by the way, feel free to, if you've got time pressure, feel free to give me like a 10-minute warning or something.
No, I'm good. I'm just gonna put on the air conditioning because it's getting hot in here, but I'm pretty good on time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll have to go in like 20 minutes, maybe.
Okay, cool. Great. Okay, well, one thing, okay, this is actually a personal question because this is something I've thought about a lot, but I always struggle with, and that's when you've shown someone a trick and they're reacting, what on earth do you do? Because I'm not the kind of person who's really motivated by reactions. So I just kind of stand there, like I've been thinking like maybe it's a good idea to just kind of take a step back and just like not say anything, because man, I fumble so hard at that point.
So I've thought about that so much. I don't know the best answer.
Mm.
One thing you can do is, like, most of my effects, when they get close to the revelation moment, there's some sort of line that I say. Like a strong line that either leads to the revelation or succeeds the revelation, and like you reveal and you say that and whatever.
Mm.
So when you say that line, you can shut up and smile and look at them and just be like, that's it. Like,
That's good.
honestly, this is one approach you can take. The other approach has more to do with what the effect is. So it's said that there's 3 types of dynamics that can be going on between magician and magic: assassin, victim, and witness. Assassin means you cause the magic, victim means the magic happens to you, witness means you're a spectator and magic is happening. I prefer witness and victim, because when you see somebody do something, you're watching a performance. But when something happens, you had an experience.
Yeah, that's true.
So your memory of the event is this happened instead of this guy did this. And I think that's better.
Mm.
Of course, they know it's me. They came to my show. But I don't want them to feel like I'm directly causing the method to happen, more often than not.
Yeah.
There are some tricks where it's fine. But like More often than not, I want to distance myself from the method as much as possible, from the cause of the magic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which means that when the effect happens, I get to react just like them. I get to be like, you know, and you don't have to. But the thing is, because I really like the magic that I do, like I only do it because I like it. So like I really like it.
Hmm.
When I get to the revelations, I can put myself a little bit in their shoes. Like, look at what they just experienced and feel a bit of the joy of like, that's crazy. And you're not necessarily reacting with them because you don't want them to, it's not like you're pretending like you don't know. But, they're going nuts and you're just going like, yeah, you're smiling and
Yeah.
looking at them and like,
Yeah, that's a good definition actually, because I get turned off quite a lot when I see people like reacting as if they don't know how it's happening. When it's like, well, everyone knows you know
yeah,
how it's
you
happening.
don't want to do that. You also don't want to go up to them and say things like, good, isn't it? Like, impressive, right? Like,
Yeah, all those corny lines of like, "How did you do that?" Very well, thank you. Like,
very well. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
come on. Yeah.
Come
Oh,
on.
there's a
Yeah,
great quote by
exactly.
Pete McCabe in Scripting Magic where he says, he's talking about hack lines when people ask, how did you do that? And all the hack lines around like, oh, very well, thank you, or can you keep a secret? So can I. All those kind of things. He's like, if I was writing like an asshole magician character,
Yeah.
those are exactly the lines I would give him. They just make you look like an absolute douchebag because
Because those lines show something that I want to show the least amount of as possible,
mm,
which is preparation. It shows that you've encountered the situation before and you kind of know what to say.
yeah,
However, when you do magic, one of the best things is that no other art form, as far as I'm concerned, can look like you're improvising besides improv. And like in magic, you can do things where like they would be like, I mean, I think at least they would have no idea that you planned for that moment to happen.
mm,
And it would seem like that just happened. And that's where they get of like, wait, was this a coincidence or like did he mean for this to happen? You know?
yeah, you're right. Magic is on a totally another level when it comes to that.
Yeah, like so I understand what you're saying with improv, and that also exists in magic. But this type of improvising
Yeah,
is
yeah.
not on method, it's on effect. The effect feels like, for example, Liquid Spectrum from Tobias.
Hmm.
You're sitting at a bar and somebody goes, "Could you do something?" And he's like, yeah, could you pass me the ketchup bottle?" And then he knocks it over and he's like, oh, shit. Okay, wait a second. Or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
the
yeah.
thing is.
Great.
I can't think of another art form that could have a moment like maybe comedy. Like,
Yeah, comedy's a good one actually.
yeah, comedy actually maybe works for that. But it's really rare because it's the idea that you can hyper prepare for a situation that feels unplanned.
Yeah.
And like
And it also makes it, like
ex-
you said before, it's not no longer a performance. It's an experience like that.
exactly,
And it's
exactly.
that moment, like I've heard of plenty of great comedians who have this moment, same with magicians, of like something goes wrong in a show and
Mm.
you're like, I was at the show where this went wrong. And then everyone has that same experience because every show it goes wrong, but it feels,
Yeah,
yeah, like
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
how
yeah, yeah.
that's how people remember it, is because they think it was unique to them.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's a Copperfield show. I think it was a Copperfield show where a guy gets in late and he makes a joke about it. And then a couple tricks later, he goes back in time and the guy arrives late again. And I was like, nice.
Mm. Yeah,
Because the first time, I had no idea. So, like, when the guy came in again, I was like, nice. I didn't think so.
yeah, those little convincers, eh?
That's a good example because in that case, I think people clearly realize, oh, so the first time was planned.
Mm.
But it's good that the first time you didn't think it was planned.
Yeah, but ideally you want them to walk away thinking that it wasn't planned.
But the second time wasn't planned either somehow.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be crazy.
yeah. Okay, well, I got some closing questions,
Ooh,
um,
nice.
which you can take as long or as little time as you want on these. And there's a few random ones that I've just thought of on the spot, which I'm going to add in. First one is, what is your favorite time you've ever experienced magic? It could be the time you're most fooled. It could be just like the first time you saw it, or whatever it was. What is your favorite time you've ever seen magic?
Um, there's been a couple instances. where I think I was at my happiest by seeing magic, and like those were during David Blaine's show, Derek Delgadio's show, and Juan Tamari's show. So those three shows were like the Juan Tamari's show was especially interesting because I knew every trick. He did all of his classics. So, like I knew them all. I studied Juan, so I knew all the tricks. There was only one trick in the show that fooled me. And that trick was the first trick in the show. And the way that trick goes, and this is a classic. It's a classic. So like maybe a lot of people know this, but I didn't know it, and still till today I don't know it because I don't want to know it because it's like this memory is so. But Juan Tamariz walks out on stage. I'm like, oh my god, he's real. He's here. You know, it's like you're seeing. It's amazing. I was like, and then Juan he goes, for the first trick, says this and that. He's like, I need somebody who I don't know. Somebody I don't know. For example, Luis. And he points at me. And I'm like, and he goes, is your name Luis? And I'm like, no. He's like, then come up on stage. And I was like, what the? He walked in 2 minutes ago and he's putting me on stage? What? This is a true story. So I go up on stage. I'm like, what is happening? And he goes, look, I have gloves. He had gloves. He's like, choose one. I was like, that one. He gives it to me. He goes, hold on to it. I hold on to it. He goes, squeeze. I squeeze. He goes, no, Antonio, you squeeze too hard. Look. And then I look, and the glove is tiny. Like, I open my hand, and the glove is tiny. I was like, what is happening? Like, I've never seen that trick before. And I don't want to know. Like, yeah, I heard it's a class. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. That's too crazy. That's the only trick in the show that fooled me, and he did it to me. So it's, like, amazing.
I'm glad it happened first, because then you have the rest of the show that's like...
Yes. The rest of the show where I was just like, seeing Tamariz do his best. It's really good. Really good.
Awesome.
Derek Delgadio's show also changed my life. Like, in and of itself, completely changed my life. Like, when I saw it, I was like, oh, I get it. This is what you want people to fucking feel.
Did you see it live or the...
I saw both, but I saw it live. Yeah.
Man. Yeah, I've only seen it, obviously, in the film, the performance he put out.
Yeah, I think I was 16, maybe. So it was like an ideal time for me to have seen that show.
Yeah.
Like right when, like, if I had seen it later, maybe I would have already had other conceptions. But like this really formed my way of thinking. And like his show is very close to if you could do the style of magic that I was talking about in a show.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
like,
I mean, obviously it's rehearsed and it's the same every time, but it doesn't.
But it's not about the feeling of it not being. It's about the feeling of you're doing something that's personal and like it's not like it's a collection of tricks. It's like it's a play. It's a story that goes on and he's doing tricks throughout. And it's like, I think at least it was much more memorable than any other magic show I saw besides Blaine. Blaine's show is the most memorable magic show you'll see.
Is that his recent one?
The Vegas one.
Oh,
yeah.
Man. Yeah. I'd love to see it.
Unreal. I saw it after he stopped doing the jump into the cardboard boxes.
Oh, really?
So I didn't see the box. Yeah, because he stopped doing that because he got injured.
Yeah, exactly.
So I saw a show where he didn't do it, but in the show I saw he did 10 minutes underwater, so that was pretty crazy.
It's amazing.
And
from a theatrical
it's amazing.
Point, you can do nothing for 10 minutes and
you do nothing, but you stay underwater for 10 minutes. And you're thinking, well, he does nothing? There's a guy with a mic who says a couple of things. Right. And the couple of things he says are pretty impactful. He's like, this is the moment in the show where all the production gets nervous, because we know David's about to do it. And we're like, oh, yeah. And then he's like, it's already been 5 minutes, back in 2000 and blah, 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 when Blaine almost died trying this. And you're like, God, what is happening? So this guy, and then he shuts up for a bit. And then he comes back and he's like, 7 minutes. And there's a huge timer. Everybody can see it, but it's so fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Oh, the suspense would be unreal.
Very dramatic. And then when he comes out, he puts a towel over himself. And he stays in the towel for like the rest of the show. Because that's the second to last trick. So he finishes the show on the towel. And like his daughter does the final trick. So it's like, it's amazing.
That's, man, I'd love
And he's like, the towel there. Like, after doing the 10 minutes of your like, guys, I'm all good.
Yeah.
It's like,
and isn't there like a crocodile in the bowl with him or something? Or is that just in the trailer?
In one of them, but not in the one I saw.
Okay.
Well, I think in one of the shows he did, or maybe in some of the shows he did that, but like not in the one I was at.
Yeah, because that's crazy as well. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. What is your biggest pet peeve in Magic? It can be as small or big as you want.
This is tough because this is one of those things that like comes up in conversation, but I don't really have them off the top of my head, you know.
Mm.
Um, ooh, one of them is when people divine something for no reason. Like, how did you know that? Like, you know? Because if you go up to it's the example of the name. If you go up to somebody and you're like, "Is your name Thomas?" It's like, yeah. How did you know? It's like, what's the
Yeah, yeah.
effect? Is the effect that you knew somehow? But then that's the question. It's just how did you know? Like that, it doesn't seem like it should be at the reason it is as crazy as it is because people are impressed when you know something that you apparently couldn't know.
Mm.
But like it seems like it's not an impossible moment. It's just a question of how he knew.
Yeah.
There's nothing impossible happening. You're saying words. Like,
So are you talking about when there's no process or anything, you just randomly kind of divine
Yeah, and when there is a process, if the process is too believable, that's also bad. Like, because then that's also just a demonstration of you being able to do that. So it's like it's very rare. Like my biggest pet peeve in magic maybe is divinations. It's very rare that I'll find a divination that I think is any good. And even great magicians doing divinations, it's like, okay, bro, but like, how do you know that? What do you think the audience is thinking? You have to give them a reason. So I have a divination that I do where I asked the whole audience to stand up. Some people have cards, not everybody. Some people have cards, and I go, everybody, in a second, you're gonna scream a card, any card. I don't care. If you have a card, you have to say your card. But if you don't, any card. And I go, do you know when you're in the mall and you like hear your mom's voice, and even though there's a lot of people talking, you hear your mom. That's because you're familiar with her voice, so your brain can kind of pick out that noise out of all the other ones, which is pretty impressive if you think about it. That your brain can do that. So I'm gonna try to do that. I'm gonna try to get familiar with your voices, and the people who picked cards, I get them to say a few things, so I kind of get used to their voice, and I go, okay. So in the count of three, everybody scream out. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, and then they go, rah! And then I'm like, oh shit. Okay, I think I heard you say 5 of hearts, and you said, and then I get all the cards. So it's like a tossed out deck, basically. But this is the present. What's great about this is people are like, wait, did he hear it? He couldn't have heard it. There's no way he heard it. 5 cards, like, he heard all, like, so and it feels like it's not about how he knew. They know how I know. They just don't believe it, and that's better.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly the kind of stuff that I love to do is the like magical skill element to it where it's not just like
Yeah.
ooh, I'm doing magic. There's some kind of possibility of how it could be done. Awesome. Okay, next question. If you could only read 3 magic books for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Like, do you mean if I like delete all other magic books, leave these three, or do you mean in your lifetime you'll erase your memory of all magic books, but these three, or do you mean name your 3 favorite magic books? Like, what do you mean?
I mean, you can have already read what you've already read, but for the rest of your life,
Okay.
the only books you can ever read related to magic are these 3.
Okay. Okay. So I would pick Here Be Bunnies by the Jerks,
Hmm.
The Jerks Volume 1 by the Jerks, and Repertoire from Asylum.
Wow, very interesting.
So Repertoire is, in my opinion, the best card magic book out there. The greatest collection of card magic in a book. There are other books that have amazing effects, but no book is as Repertoire. Like all the tricks in Repertoire are stellar 10 out of 10, and I don't think any other book does that.
Actually,
Here Be Bunnies is. Do you think there's a card
no,
magic
I
book
was
that's
going to
as
say
like.
I feel like Asi Win's style is like very similar to your style. Now that I think about it,
Yeah,
or at least in terms of
yeah,
the way he like structures his effects, that's quite interesting.
yeah. I think so. I take a lot of inspiration from Asi. Um, Here Be Bunnies is the Jerk's book on theory. It's just theory, but it's all of his theory, and it's for me the most important magic theory ever written.
Mm.
And the Jerks Volume 1 is just his first collection of effects. And in that place, in the place of the Jerks Volume 1, you could put any of the Jerks books. Literally anyone is just as good as any of the other ones. And it's just going to be the craziest collection of effects that are not practical cards to do at gigs. It's the stuff that you really want. So it's
Yeah,
like those three, I think, would give me enough to think about in all areas that I like to explore.
yeah, that's a great answer. I bet you're excited for Repertoire 2 coming out.
It's already out. I need to get it.
Yes. Okay, I got one last question. This is one of my favorite questions. If you could go out for dinner with any magician who has ever lived, who would it be?
Hofzinser.
Wow, straight to the point. Have you thought about that before?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But it has to be Hofzinser.
Yeah,
Hofzinser came up with the top change,
yeah.
the classic force, the cull,
Hmm.
the double backer, the like, bro. Hofzinser
He was
is
so far
nuts.
before his time. Yeah.
He came up with the timing force as a concept. Like, for me, coming up with the top change, the classic force, and the cull. If you're the same guy, like, come on, bro, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, though it would be hard because don't you think there'd be some communication issues? You know, like he's what, like late 1800s?
Yeah, yeah. Well, also he's dead, but like,
Well,
if that's not an impediment, like,
it's a good point.
if him being dead doesn't get in the way, I'm sure we can figure out language. Like Google Translate the shit out of Hofzinser. Like,
Yeah, do,
I
do
don't
you
know.
reckon that there would be, like, what do you think you would show Hofzinser if you could sit down with him? Like, in terms of, like,
I,
do you think you'd show anything or you'd just be listening?
I would show everything and anything. Like, literally everything that I've come up with that I think these are the best things I've ever come up with. Like, this is all I would show. So I have. I mean, I can't really talk about it without exposing what they are.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I have a couple sandwich tricks that I think are like the best sandwich tricks. Like,
I think
I
I know
mean,
what
I
you're
at
talking
least
about.
have 15 sandwich tricks that I like more than these. So like, I would show those. I also have a handling for card to pocket that I'll tell you the conditions, and you probably won't believe me, but it's like it really is these conditions. It can be a signed card, there's no dupes. Your hand only goes to your pocket once and it goes empty.
Boom. That's great.
Like for real, any card, signed card, no dupes, your hand only goes to your pocket once and it goes empty. And it's like
Yeah,
it's
that's
it's
great.
it's you could ask the spectator, watch my pocket during the whole trick, and like they wouldn't see the card getting in there at any. It's like it's a method for card to pocket that I legit think is like groundbreaking. Like there's no method for card to pocket that's like this one. So like I would really like to see what Hofzinser thinks,
Wow.
because like I came up with this as an accident like one day. So it's like it's one of those. Like I could have never come up with this if I wanted to. It has to be coming up as an accident. If you
Well,
see the method, you'll
we're going to talk about that more later when we're not
we will. We will.
Okay, well,
After
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. We turn the recording off and then we talk the real good stuff. No, well, honestly, Antonio, thanks for coming on. Do you have anything you want to plug? This is your chance to do that to my millions of fans.
So, if any of you guys are interested in my work and would like to see more, I published an ebook with Franco that was mentioned here before. It's called Vital. It's a collection of 8 effects. However, in each one of the effects, there's multiple variations. So, at the end of the day, you're learning more. There's also new techniques that are explained in the book for some of the effects. Uh, and honestly, yeah, like it's my book, so of course I think it's good. But
It's
I really
really good.
think
I've read it
it's
and
it's a solid card magic book
yeah,
because it talks about this style of card magic that's like more conceptual. And when you see plots, you'll see different types of methods. You'll see multiple types of methods that suit different performing situations. And it's the type of things that if I didn't come up with all that material, I would love to know of that material, which is why we published it.
yeah, it's genuinely great. There's some fantastic stuff in there.
But I'll say this. My favorite effect from Vital is open end.
Oh
That's all I'll
yeah,
say.
that's a banger.
Open. That's my favorite trick from Vital, and I think it's one of the most like overlooked tricks from the book. Maybe the most overlooked trick from the book. But I've fooled an insane amount of knowledgeable magicians with this trick. Like you wouldn't believe the people who were fooled by this trick. It's really good.
What's the name of the one that is your guys' take on the biddle trick? I love that one.
It's called Sleep Outside.
Oh, sleep outside. The methods behind that are crazy, bro. Yeah, I love that one. Great.
The
Okay.
biddle trick method, and the biddle trick method is something that we're gonna come back to and explore for another effect, which is a thought of card across. I can show you that after
Yes, please.
recording's done.
That would be great. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks so much, Antonio. It's been a pleasure as always. And you're officially the first person that I've done this with. I
That's
didn't
it.
even explain anything at the
That's
start.
amazing.
But for anyone who's watching the full thing, this is going to be a regular series that I've started, and it'll be hard to top this episode, that's for sure. So
I mean, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate that you invited me to be the first one. I think that's great. Like, if this series, I'm pretty sure I can already see like amazing names coming on. And when they're coming on, I'm gonna be like, but did you know that like I was the
yeah,
first
yeah,
one?
you're the first one. Yeah, exactly. I have to start with the heat, so then people realize that it's good. Um,
Wow, bro. Thank you so much.
cool. Well, I'm going to turn the recording off now. Thanks to everyone who's been listening. If you want to hear more of this, you can
Oh, if you
subscribe.
can leave my Instagram in the
Yeah, yeah.
description.
I'll put all the
People
information.
wanna,
I'll put Vital. There'll be a link
if
down
people
here.
want to find me out, Instagram, look up my stuff. There's a couple of videos there you might like.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of putting this on Spotify. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, that's crazy, firstly.
Nice.
And you can find all that stuff on YouTube, which
Yeah.
is Caleb Simpson. Cool. Well, thanks for being on. And now we're going to get into the real juicy stuff.